Welcome everyone back to I Want to Teach English. I'm Jose Torres. I am a 20 plus year veteran in the field of teaching English language learners, especially those at the newcomer level. So you've come to the right place. You're thinking, hey, I have these new students that just came into my class, my course, and they don't speak any English at all. So let's begin with the absolute basics. You're dealing with students who don't really speak English very well. They're having a hard time just trying to figure out what's going on. And so I think there's a lot of different impulses that people have where, they want to go right into the greetings and my name is and all that stuff. And that's great. You could do that. But essentially, before you can go anywhere beyond that, you're going to need to establish some directional cues. Okay. And so that's why I spend the first part of the book, and forgive me, but I'm going to reference the book that I wrote, I Want to Learn English, because that's really kind of what I mapped out the whole semester or the whole school year, really, for students who are in my class, because that's over the years, this is what I've developed and this is what I know works. And so I'm going to share with you what I know is something that works. Okay. So before I get into any of that, just do me a favor. If you haven't done so already, please hit subscribe. If you know other teachers who work with English language learners, whether they're level 1s or level 2s, share this channel with them so that they can start watching these videos and share with their colleagues as well. I'm going to be interviewing other teachers, and I'm going to be trying to get some questions from people who are watching, followers, new subscribers, or just the curious who want to know more about this job. Learning vocabulary basics. So in this book, I lay out 8 direction words, 8 direction vocabulary words. And they set the tone for how we're going to go forward. Now, mind you, you're going to add more direction words as you go along, depending on what activities you're going to be doing. So there's probably a plethora of directional words that you can share with your students and teach them along the way. But these are the first 8 because these are some of the more basic activities or directional words that are going to pertain to those activities. So let's start with this. What you're looking here, it says number 1 is listen. Okay. Listen is a very, very crucial direction word. So when you're telling a student to listen, you go through that word, repeat that word as many times as necessary in order for them to understand, what it is that they're hearing, and also hopefully be able to articulate it with some mastery at some point. Listening is a crucial part of everything that we do, honestly. And, I do this illustration in the book where, I kind of give these little cartoons or illustrations or whatnot to kind of drive home the point of what each vocabulary word is. So listen is a big one. Number 2 is repeat. So this is something you're going to be doing a lot, and I do mean a lot in this work. The lower the level you are working with, the more you're going to repeat. And even with intermediate or advanced level students, you still have to do a lot of repeating because this is a matter of them incorporating those sounds and being able to articulate them and kind of creating this pattern in their articulation so that they can become better at saying those words, whatever they are. Talk is a big one because I think when we a lot of teachers like to use turn and talk type of activities where we want our students to engage each other and talk either in conversation or something pertaining to the lesson, whether they're doing pair work, small group work, or just a class group discussion. It's very important that they understand what it is that we're asking of them. And that's basically for them to converse, right? Write is a big one because you want them to be able to put their thoughts down on paper. Now, we have to evolve, and I've said this in other videos. We have to evolve as teachers. So I encourage my students that if they're going to try to articulate a thought, whether it's a response to a question, whether it's something related to an activity that we're doing and it requires them to write down their answers, and they just don't really know how to do it, I tell them, you could use a Google Translate or you can use some other translate app on your phone or your computer write it out, kind of write it out in Spanish and have it translated into English, but I still ask them to physically write it out by hand. So they can say whatever the response is in Spanish, write it up, translate it into English, and then that text they're going to put down on paper with their own handwriting. Look is another one, because you're going to ask them to look at certain visual cues or look at a particular page in the book, etc. So that's a big one for them. Point is something that a direction that I use a lot, because sometimes they're not able to verbalize whatever their answers are, or they're not able to articulate. So they'll be, if they could point, it's a whole physical action for them to respond to a question, or whether or not they know the answer to something. Spell is a big one. Spell is a massive one, because we want our students to become more familiar with how to spell in English. So, you want them to become more familiar with the letters of the alphabet, and just being able to automatically be able to spell things. That's a big one. Now, of course, we're evolving, like I said. It's getting harder to make those kind of spelling mistakes when you're typing, because just about every application that we use on the computer or even on the phone, which will indicate when you have an error, a spelling error. And so a lot of times it'll make suggestions for what word it is. So spelling isn't necessarily a huge problem as it used to be, but I still encourage students to try to spell things out themselves. It's only better. It'll only make their critical thinking development sharper. It'll just make it better. And the last one, number 8, is match. And I like to use matching because you can match all kinds of things. You can match a word with a visual representation, or you can match, a question with an answer, or a statement with a response. Matching is a big thing, and it's not a hard concept to demonstrate for students. You could do it visually. You can do it on the board. You can do it, with two things that are the same, and just kind of bring home that understanding for them. And it's not that difficult for them to understand, hey, these two things go together, Once you go through each one, this is where you start to really apply it. So, like, for example, let's talk about listen and repeat. These two go together. Talk about matching. Listening and repeating go together, right? So you could do this example with them. Like, for example, listen and repeat. My name is Jose. And they're supposed to repeat. My name is Jose. Tomorrow is Tuesday. And they will repeat. Tomorrow is Tuesday, etc. So you do these repetition type of activities where they're listening to you and then they're repeating back what you say. Okay, that's a very basic, simple, basic activity that you have to get students to do, especially those at the newcomers level. Talking is going to be a little bit more. It's going to be a little bit more complicated. They'll more than likely converse with each other in their native language, because that's just the natural impulse. But don't be discouraged by that, and don't discourage them from doing that. I would say it's just my professional opinion. Whether they're talking about, their move here, or if they're adults, they could have them talk about their job or looking for a job or what their situation is. As long as they're, not venturing into anything inappropriate, this is strongly encouraged for them to do that. With, middle and high school students, sometimes a little awkward. So you don't want to force that. So if that's the situation, then I will step in as the teacher and have these conversations with students one-on-one so that they can get something going. It's, I have the advantage of speaking Spanish. Spanish-speaking students, I can have that conversation with them in L1. But if you speak another language and you're having students speaking that same language, I encourage you to do that as well. If not, you can always use your Google Translate and just kind of do the conversation that way. When you see with the direction right, use a pen or a pencil to spell out the words in a sentence, like write your name. That's a very simple, basic direction. Basically, the command write your name, they're just going to write out their name. And hopefully if they're using the same letter system as we do in English, then that will be very simple. But if they use a different system, like Arabic, for example, or Russian, they don't use the same letters we do, so they really need to reference the alphabet for them to do that if necessary. But that's just something you're just going to have to be patient with them about that. Word look Means you focus on only one thing. When you point, you use your finger. So I use look and point together. I kind of match these two up a lot and say look and point. Like, for example, the example that I use in the book is look at the man with the hat and point to him. And, of course, there's two men in this picture, and it's a matter of finding the one that's wearing a hat, etc. So sometimes kids have fun with that. Students have fun with that. They get a little confused. You spell words using letters. So it's not just a matter of them writing out the letters. I want them to say it. I want them to say the letters. And this is a really good thing I do. It's funny. It lightens the mood. I will turn my back and I'll be facing the board, and I'll say, okay, I'll call on a certain student. Maria, for example, will you spell your name? And I'm going to write exactly what you say. And it always tickles them, because if they can't say the letters correctly, like they'll say M, E, and I'll put E, and they're like, no, it's not that letter. I don't know what you said, E, so I'm writing E. No, it's A. Okay, A, and you just do this, and it's not meant to like humiliate them or anything like that, but it's actually a very lighthearted way for them to try to get the pronunciation of the letters correct. I've been doing that for years and years and years, decades, and it always gets a lot of laughs. And it just lightens the mood. Everyone's just kind of, it's a fun activity. It's almost like a game in some ways. Matching, of course, is just finding items that go together, whether they're words with their picture representations, or whether it's an answer and a question, etc. You can be real creative with this. This is just a real simple, basic one that I use, but you can basically come up with all kinds of ways to do matching to kind of get them more practice and understand when you say, okay, well, let's match this with this, column A with column B, for example. And students will pick up on it really, really quickly, because, unless they got very little formal schooling from where they're coming from, they should be able to do this rather quickly. And then finally, I always end this with some kind of assessment tool. Now, this is a key thing. This is going to take a little bit of planning, whether you're doing your own or whether you're using the book. The book already has it, but if you're doing your own, and even if you're adding to it, you might want to have some kind of assessment tools, or you can even kind of make them up on the fly, really. But it can be observational, but you do need to take down some notes, especially when you're trying to, because this is the early stages of your classes. When you're doing this, you're going to want to write down what students did what, because that's going to help you target better what you're going to be teaching later on. So you don't waste time and waste energy on teaching things that students already know, or not dedicate enough time on something they really need. So this is a really good example. This is really simple. Most students by this time, after doing all those activities and kind of spending a lot of time, it really does take more time than what I just kind of briefly did here in about 10 minutes or whatever it's been. But you really want to go over this and have them write the number of the word with the physical visual representation. Like, for example, over here you have these two look like mints, but they're black and white. You can see that they're pointing at each other. So they would have to decide which one of these words go with this illustration, which would be, of course, matching. So they would just write the number 8 here in the line. And you could do the first one with them so that they know what they have to do. And then just keep going. And then they just do the rest on their own. And they just have to figure out which of the words go with which of the visual representation illustration. That would be my tip really for this episode, is to kind of get with those direction vocabularies. If you're not sure how to start with vocabulary that's going to impact students' understanding of what's being asked of them to do. So if they are doing some kind of text that you want to read with them, or if there's a modeled conversation or those sort of things, you have to get those direction vocabulary words first, go over it with them, so that when you get to that activity, they know what's expected of them. Anyways, I hope this was of help to you, of use to you. Do me a favor, if you like this video, please hit that like button. If you haven't done so, subscribe to this channel, share this with others, and hopefully you'll get more people to kind of tune into this channel. I'm Jose Torres. This has been I Want to Teach English. We're going to be doing way more. Hopefully we'll get some pretty good guests on here to talk more about this craft that we do, this work that we do, working with newcomers and helping them learn English. Until next time, everyone, God bless.